This is Aubrey Bettencourt, President and CEO of Almond Alliance. This is Almond Alert. Hi, everybody. I'm Aubrey Bettencourt, President and CEO of the Almond Alliance, and this is Almond Alert, our podcast format where we deep dive in and bring to you some experts in various topics that affect our industry and community, both at the local, state, federal level, but across the spectrum, whether we're talking about transportation or technology or law or policy or you name it. We're going to dive into it here. The point of the podcast is to really bring to you, our members and friends, different points of view. Sometimes we get into an echo chamber when we put our heads down in our community, in our industry, and we forget that there's other perspectives and there's other experts. And so that's what really the goal and the mission of Almond Alert is to bring in these experts, bring in these other points of view to try to provide you with other perspectives to better inform your decision making on behalf of your business, your community, and the almond community at large. So thanks so much, and here is Almond Alert. Today, we're actually joined by a really good friend of the Almond Alliance and member of the Almond Alliance, Peter Schneider with TGS Logistics and TGS Transportation. Peter is one of the first folks I met when I came on board and has been in the trenches with us on all things supply chain disruption and supply chain solution, like the Almond Express. He's a part of my Tiger team, tackling those issues for us, helping us to really just key in on what are key solutions, what are actually going on the ground, and how does that translate for us into different decisions and negotiations and policy and regulation. He has incredible experience based out of the Fresno area. His company is a drayage company serving the ports of LA, Long Beach, and Oakland with clients all over, customers all over California and Nevada. It's a strong ag exporter, huge in ag. He talks a lot about working with a lot of our members at the Almond Alliance, but also in pistachios and walnuts, cotton, and a number of other commodities as well, hauling upwards of around 15,000 loads a year of just almonds and pistachios. So he's been a great friend of the Almond Alliance. He's also one of the most forethought guys I've ever worked with in terms of his engagement and understanding the holistic, not only of his business, and the future of his industry in trucking and logistics, but also understanding the policy implications and the effects of politics and policy on his business. And so he's incredibly involved in a lot of different organizations, CTA, the California Trucking Association, the Harbor Trucking Association, the Port Efficiency Task Force and Seaport Stakeholder Roundtable for the Port of Oakland. He's been part of the Federal Maritime Commission Supply Chain Innovation Team. So he is not only someone who is a tactician, who understands his business literally from starting on working on a truck or starting on a forklift, but all the way up into these bigger managerial and policy decisions. And he's been a voice for his industry and community and a voice for our industry and community. And so I'm so excited to have him join us today as we deep dive in something that's really affecting us right now in real time, which is AB-5. That was the gig economy legislation that passed out of back in 2019, carried by then legislator Lorena Gonzalez, unanimously moved through the state legislature and was signed by Gavin Newsom. Most recently, and why this has popped since 2019 here in 2022, is this was appealed. There was a stay. It was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just recently kicked it back, said states' rights, California, it's up to you, and implementation is pending. And as a result, hundreds of independent truckers here in California, if not thousands, have been protesting at the ports of Long Beach, ports of Los Angeles, but most importantly at the Port of Oakland, where you're going to hear some amazing stats, but basically where that has had a dramatic effect on our ability to move product just at a time when we really needed to move product as we were coming into our harvest here starting in just a few weeks. So we're excited to have you join us on Almond Alert. Here is Peter Schneider. So it's been shipping has been for us at the Almond Alliance. We've talked about the top two issues for us this year is a reliable water supply and a functioning supply chain. And if we don't have a functioning supply chain, did we lose Peter?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Craig doing his thing. So we've been talking all year long about, coming into 2022, and I started back in December. So, really assessing what was going on, that really for 2022, it was going to be a reliable water supply and a functioning supply chain. And so we have, as a lot of folks know, we've been just bulldogging supply chain from a tactical standpoint for our membership and for our industry, because we saw just the facts and figures of, from September to April, the price degradation of almost $2 billion just to almonds. We hadn't moved 1.3 billion pounds, where normally our carry out was somewhere around 600,000. And we needed to move that much by the end of July if we were going to be on pace for what we knew was going to be well over a 2.5 billion pound crop. We now know it's about a 2.6 billion pound crop. And just when we were making momentum and we had, May turned into, was it? Yeah. May we had over 250 million pounds move. It was the highest movement of almonds in history, and on an off month. Apparently, May is not a big month for us to move like that. And then 278 million pounds in June. We were like fingers crossed, all of industry. In July, going, we just need one more. Mm-hmm. And you, Peter, have been a great partner and a great member of the Alliance in helping us through our Tiger team, which has been, for those who don't know, our Tiger team has been assembled to kind of hit on every point of the supply chain, bring in expertise from on the ground to attack issues within supply chain solutions for us. And I know, Peter, you've been involved as kind of our guy on trucking and the on the ground logistics side of this. So here we arrive in July thinking we finally got ourselves there. Our Tiger team had just met, if you'll recall, and then AB-5 pokes its ugly head up out of the ground again. And so that's kind of the context of this conversation is, what really is AB-5? Why is it popping up now? How is it having, I think everybody who's going to listen to this probably has a good idea of how it's affecting us, but, where are we? And a little bit of background. And I called you right away and I was like, what is this? Yeah. It's Uber and Lyft. What the heck? And so I figured the conversation you and I had, the world needs to have. So sure. Peter, thank you for being here, and maybe just start there. Like, sure. Where did that come from, and how did we get here?
All right. So I'll give you the short version on the first half of this. There was a Dynamex lawsuit 4 years ago where I believe it's the city or the state sued Dynamex for independent contractor law, and they were a daily delivery kind of company, kind of like a courier service. Mm-hmm. And the court applied this law, this ABC test, of which has never been applied in any kind of transportation. It was more like a child law. I forget exactly the details, but I don't want to get into all of that. So long story short, in April of 2019, there was a decision made on Dynamex against them, and it applied this ABC test. And in our world of transportation, the Borello test, and you can look that up, has been applied for 30 years. And it's basically a case-by-case, every single case, kind of getting off here, but every single case that has been filed has used the Borello test, whether it's the Department of Labor, DLSE, or bigger cases with independent contractors, or even class action lawsuits. It's always used the Borello test, which every single driver is applied not a certain way, but it's how that contract has been upheld. Now, this just is a broad stroke with this ABC test. So in September of 2019, the California state legislature approved AB-5, and then the governor the next day signed the damn thing into law, and it went into effect January 1st, 2020. Myself and a lot of other companies said, okay, we're not going to sit with our hands under our behinds. We're going to get something done. So we had a massive town hall meeting with all of our drivers the next month, got with my attorneys, I formed new corporations, I already had my brokerage authority, and I got everything set up. And most of the large trucking companies, I'm a medium-sized one, but most of the larger ones in our industry did that. There are a few that didn't, and there are a lot of the little guys that didn't. So January 2020 to now, I'm legal, I'm fine. But what happened is on December 31st, 2019, a LA County judge said, nope, we're putting an injunction on this. and like it right at the last minute, before
Mm.
the new year and everything. Otherwise, it would have became law. So he put an injunction. It went into effect, I think, January 16th or 13th um, of 2020, and from then to June 30th of this year, there's been an injunction in place. That
Mm.
injunction went from the state court to the California Supreme Court to the federal Supreme Court, which was denied. And after that, the law becomes into effect 7 days later. Now, it still actually has not come into effect because I think either the judge is on vacation or something's going on. But we're basically, the injunction's lifted, and you have to follow the ABC rules of AB-5. What
Okay.
are
Yeah, I was gonna say, walk me through what the ABCs of AB-5. This is
right?
like acronym
I
central
know,
right
and
now.
and which is the opposite of BA, whatever, which is the new variant in COVID.
Right.
Anyway, so AB-5 ABC test is got obviously three things that we have to follow. The first thing is the A test is the driver, the independent contractor, as its own business, has to be free of control. It can work. He or she can work wherever they want. They can, if they have more than one truck, they can place their trucks wherever they want to work wherever they want. Period. The C part, I'll get into B in a second because that's the complicated one. The C part is the independent has its own business, has its own authority, manages its own business, pays its own taxes, pays its own bills. It is not just free of control in A, but C, it has its own business and authorities, is the main thing. It can work, they can work for others, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, in most of our um, industry, that we most everybody passes that test fine. We have as a company forever because we've always made our independent contractors run under their authority. They
Mm-hmm.
have their own authority. Back not even 5 years ago, let alone 15, 20, 30 years ago, all independents had to run under our authority in order to get into the ports and the rail.
Oh,
So it
okay.
wasn't even a question. They had to use our authority. And I'll get into that in just a second. They still have to, and I'll get into that detail in just a minute. So the B part of the test is the business to business relationship. California is saying that an independent contractor cannot work for a company that does the exact same business. So a
What?
trucking company cannot work for another trucking
Another
company.
trucking company.
So my company, TGS, cannot work for JB Hunt. JB Hunt cannot work for TGS. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I've worked with, one of your larger members, Divine Intermodal, who handles, some large accounts for you. I, we've had reciprocal agreements. We've worked together for better part of 15 years. I have probably a dozen trucking companies that I work with. Some of them are like Schneider and Swift and Werner that I've worked with for 15, 20, even 30 years, 35 years with Werner. Um, and they're a $4 or $5 billion company. Why can't I work for another company? Why can't they work for me? That doesn't make any sense. So they're putting that all the way down from a Werner Swift all the way down to the one truck guy, independent contractor. They cannot work for me because they're a trucking company and I'm a trucking company. So in order for us to be compliant, there's two ways to be compliant. One, I don't have any independence. I'm solely a company trucking company. So all I do is have company assets and I run company trucks, and that's it. That's the 100% way to get around this, and that's what the Teamsters want. I'll talk about that if you like. That's who invented the AB-5 law, or was behind it, I should say, with Congresswoman Gonzalez down in San Diego.
State legislator. Yeah.
They said,
Miranda Gonzalez. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So the uh, other way to be legal, how we are, is you have to have your brokerage authority. So that's where TGS Transportation has been around since 1985. TGS Logistics actually has been around since 1988, but we
Hmm.
never used it. And that's our brokerage authority. So we renewed our brokerage authority. All of our independents run under TGS Logistics. TGS Logistics is actually the main company now with all of the customers and the independent contractors, and we sub our work out to TGS Transportation when my basically TGS Transportation's only customer now is TGS Logistics.
Logistics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot there. There's even more.
There's a lot there. So the B2B component on section B, see, and I thought you were just having fun with my dyslexia going A, C to B. So the B2B component, that's interesting. Is that unique to just the, this is going to sound weird in my own ignorance. I mean, is that across all sectors or is it specific? Is it
It's for every independent contractor in California. Now, of course, there's I want to say several, like a couple hundred carve outs for attorneys, for CPAs, accountants, for certain doctors, not all doctors, which is surprising. Some of the more refined doctors don't have carve outs, but dentists have carve outs. And then there's, you'd have to look, but there's a lot of carve outs out now.
Yeah.
And then the one that was done, so there were carve outs done in 2019 when the law was agreed upon, but then again in September of 2020, there was a chunk more carve outs, including, I think, Uber, Lyft.
Okay, so let's get into this implementation piece, right? Because I think so what has directly happened and what has brought us to this point is the Supreme Court kind of sticking to its profile right now, said states' rights issue, we're not taking this up, kicking it back. Which is sticking pretty well with its profile of decision making right now when you look at the record. So it gets kicked back. There's a lag time here in implementation a little bit, as you just described. We've seen some chatter out of the governor's office, GoBiz, saying, hey, you guys have had time, let's start rolling and implementing, you knew this was coming, kind of thing. And that's, is what it is when you consider, the challenges taking place legally. But it sounds to me like over the course of the last few years, the law has been developing in its own way. And so as a result of it getting kicked back, we've seen independent contracting truckers protesting, both in Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach, and predominantly Port of Oakland, where it has had the greatest impact on our sector in the almond world and in the ag space. So where the protests have blocked the gates to the port, made it impossible for your trucks to get in, blocked the gates for the ILW, the longshoremen, to be able to park their car so they could get to work, and just causing mass disruption. And I think I heard, I don't know if it was you or Karen or someone was saying, for every one day we're down, that's like a week to get ramped back up because
4 to 5 days, right?
To just slow down the behemoth that is a functioning port. So obviously that's having massive repercussions. My members, of course, instantly loads getting. I mean, I just got off the phone with a couple of members just said they had like 5 loads ready to go out. They're gone. Someone had 20 million pounds to go, or 2 million pounds to go out last week. Couldn't get it out. So it's now this massive shift in trying to find other outlets, trying not to miss boats because boats are still coming, which is kind of frustrating, and that's causing just further congestion on the port, as I understand, because they're offloading but nothing's moving.
Right.
So okay, the ask from the protests is what?
Change the B prong or get rid of AB-5 altogether. Now, the protesters are everyday truck drivers. They're not legalese. They're not staffers working for the Sacramento government. They're good truck drivers. Some of them are very educated and all that good stuff. But simply put, they don't understand the law. It's a law. You can't just write it off. You can't just, say goodbye to it. Now, the governor does have some options. He could put a stay because of the, I'll just say, hysteria we've gone through in the supply chain over the last 2 years with COVID and how we're still trying to catch up. We still are, I don't know,
significantly behind.
We're really behind.
Yeah.
Things are congested. So if he could put a stay on AB-5 for the trucking industry or the B prong of it to let people catch up and get legal, that would be wonderful. Another avenue is, well, that's pretty much the only thing that I know that he can do. I guess there's probably a few other things if you put a stay on things and delay it, say a year or something until the supply chain gets better, not just with what happened with the protesters, but because the supply chain is very weak and fragile and fragmented, as you very well know. Uh, and with the peak season coming on, not just with almonds and pistachios and all the nuts, but also retail, back to school's going on right now, and then pretty soon, I mean, there's already people shipping Christmas trees, not real ones, but fake ones. I know Lowe's and Home Depot, they're shipping all their Christmas stuff, their Thanksgiving stuff. A lot of people have already shipped all their Halloween stuff, and they want to be ready. They don't want to miss it. That's why the warehouses are cramped packed, and why stuff isn't moving is because they've forward shipped a lot of their stuff. So, with all that being said, the supply chain is very fragile, and he could put something into effect that, because of that, let's hold off on this implementation. We can't afford any more supply chain disruptions. As you mentioned, one day of a terminal being shut down takes us 3, 4, 5 days to get caught up. And Oakland was shut down for the most part a whole week last week. So you're looking into well into August before we're caught up.
So, yeah, a lot to unpack. So first and foremost, I think what's key to understand is the authority now that basically the legal channels to this point have been exhausted. Never put it past a good creative attorney to find something else.
Yep.
So that could be happening. But at the very least, in terms of the context of the original lawsuits and the original stay put on AB-5, and then the legal process up to the Supremes and then back, that puts the authority of implementation squarely on the governor of California, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so a full repeal. I mean, the political reality, let's just speak frankly, the political reality is probably not, because he supported it, he signed it, he had legislature supporting it, as well to get it through to him. So, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense there. The implementation part of this is interesting. So there is still room for, under his authority, to do various implementation changes or tweaks, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're talking to our attorneys. I think we're supposed to have 2 or 3 options tomorrow on how to rewrite the B prong, how to rewrite A, B, and C. There's different, I believe New Jersey and Illinois have been using an ABC type of test, not in transportation, but in other sectors for independent contractors for years. It's not as drastic and as pointed as what California's done. And so there's other ways to skin the cat. So hopefully our attorneys can write something up, and then we can discuss it with labor and the governor, to make some amendments. From what we've gotten from all the wonderful phone calls last week, it's pretty much zero. They really have no appetite, especially by the end of last week. And now that cargo's moving again in Oakland, things are running, albeit very slow. So I don't know where we go from here.
Yeah, it's been kind of my question throughout all of this is, where does this land, right? And that's a question I get a lot, is where does this resolve? Where does this land? How does this end? And yeah.
Real quick, I would ask to see if, most of the industry did not prepare for this because they all thought the injunction would stay and the Supreme Court would hear it and the Supreme Court would say, yeah, this is ridiculous. But as you pointed out already, they're throwing everything back to states' rights, and you figured out. So where this could get ugly is that, state's not going to do anything. Boom, LA, Long Beach, and Oakland both in the same week make major protests and shut things down again, make things really ugly. Then I think the federal government needs to step in. Now, the other way to look at it is hopefully the governor could say something like, listen, we understand that a lot of the trucking community did not get ready for it, even though some of them did. How about we postpone this and make it effective January 1, 2023, and give us 6 months? Something like that. That would be fair. Now, I don't know if fair is really in their vocabulary with us, to be candid, but that would be an option.
So real quick, and you touched on this earlier, and you can get into as much detail as you're comfortable with or not, but so we know that the authority and the decision making is housed with the executive. It's housed with Governor Newsom and his office. who are the players here? You keep talking about we and we want to negotiate. I'm hearing options. Who are
Sure.
kind of the key players at the
So
table who would
the
do?
AB-5 protesters, those are independents.
Mm-hmm.
We don't control those. We're
No.
not talking to them behind the scenes, telling them
Yeah.
to do anything. We're kind of on the fence. We want them to work because our companies are shut down in
Mm-hmm.
Oakland last week. But at the same time, we want these AB-5 to be fixed, repealed, uh, modified so that it's workable for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, we want what they want, but at the same time, we also need to keep cargo moving for all of you.
Yeah.
So the we is a couple of things. Um, the independent contractors, they work for me and a lot of my partner trucking friends. Also the we is the HTA, Harbor Trucking Association, who are kind of the boots on the ground advocates for all harbor truckers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the CTA, California Trucking Association, which is in Sacramento. We have lobbyists, and we're the ones writing or rewriting, and our attorneys with labor, which is the Teamsters, who are the ones behind AB5 from a couple of years ago, and Gavin Newsom in his office.
Okay. So that's good. I think it's just important to understand the lay of the land.
Yeah.
We're seeing, the coverage of this has been interesting, and
Yeah.
I'm a media geek, so I'm always looking at, okay, how are people talking about things, and
Right.
national news is talking about exactly what you're talking about. We're heading into the busy season of back to school and Christmas, and all I keep thinking of is Hobby Lobby put Christmas out at 4th of July. So that's what they do.
Yep.
Seems
Yep.
like it's just coming earlier and earlier. Um, and and then the flip side of that, as we saw with the supply chain disruption side, is just we lose the export narrative. And I think when we started drilling into the communication on this, I feel like understanding the players and understanding the dynamics of those players was lost in a lot of the reporting. And I don't blame it. You've got a 30-second soundbite, right? That's what we do platforms like this for, so we can actually have a conversation.
Sure.
The kind of one question I have is under the C component, where a contractor, you pick up a licensing and then you can, how long would that take for an independent trucker to do?
Great question. So there's different licensing that they need to have.
Mm-hmm.
So to be an independent contractor, licensed motor carrier (LMC),
Mm-hmm.
hauling ICC freight, um, interstate freight, which is freight that goes outside the state of California, you have to have your DOT authority and your MC authority, and you get both at the same time. I don't remember the cost. I think it's $125. It's
Okay.
pretty small. It takes a couple weeks, and you get my certificate in the mail, and you're good to go. But you also need to have the proper insurances. So
Mm-hmm.
your general liability, your auto liability, your physical damage on your truck, your cargo insurance, unidentified trailer because you're hauling a container and a chassis, they're not yours. And then a certain amount of cargo coverage. Your nuts are pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So generally speaking, we like to have, for my company, I only let them have, they're allowed to have 150,000 or less, 100 to 150,000.
Okay.
I cover them over and above that, another couple 100,000. So we have at least $300,000 coverage, and your nuts are usually 200,000, 250. So you guys are covered. I do have specialty cargo that sometimes reaches 500 to a million, and I get a rider on my insurance for that.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, they need to have the proper insurance, their authorities, and then they need to have their own business. They can't run it under Joe Schmo Trucking and their social security number. They have to have an EIN number and fictitious business name, sole proprietorship, LLC, corporation. All of that's legal. And then we have a contract, and it's a broker to trucker contract. That's what makes it this whole thing legal on the C prong, is that it's a broker, or a B prong, excuse me, it's a non business to business relationship that's the same. So it's a broker to a trucker, not a trucker to a trucker. So if they follow all those rules, and the other side too, there's one little part to the C prong, is they need to work for somebody else sometimes.
Right.
So most of my guys don't want to work for anybody but me.
Right.
I pay really good. I got a great kind of even though I'm a medium size or bigger business, it's a family atmosphere. We treat them great. We have a good setup in how we operate with them. So they prefer working for just me. But we tell the guys, hey, we're going to be slow this week. Go find business somewhere else.
Yeah, it's the double-edged sword to the independent contractor component, right? If I remember from my days, you have to show that you have multiple clients,
Right.
right? Otherwise, you're considered, an employee,
Yeah.
right? So you've got AB-5 that's forcing you into being an employee, and so to get out of that, you have to file as your own business to be,
Right.
an independent company,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to have multiple clients so that you aren't
Yeah.
considered an employee.
And I have an
Well,
independent.
it's an interesting spot that you end up in as a contractor, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I can see if they're working with you, right?
I have an independent that's worked for me since 1995.
Oh my
He has
gosh.
not worked for anybody else but me, and he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a Sikh Indian. We come from very different backgrounds. He is from Punjabi, but he is more white than me, more American than me. He's just a hilarious guy, but he will not work for anybody else. He said, when we're slow, I'll just go home. I don't want to work for anybody else. Now, he's kind of rare. Most everybody, needs to put food on the table, and he's done very well. He is, um, most everybody else, they'll work for a Divine, they'll work for another guy, based in LA Long Beach or the
Right.
Central Valley or something. And what we do when they know certain times of the year we may be slower. That hasn't happened for a few years, but generally before COVID, we'd have a few down weeks or months. We'd let people know, and they would go search out work for somebody else that is busier. And we
Yeah.
have guys that leave every year and they do field hauling for you guys, for
Oh
the
yeah,
almond, for the pistachios,
for sure.
they do cotton. I mean, they'll leave for 4,
Tomatoes.
5,
Yeah.
6 weeks, 8 weeks, then they come back and it's like, hey, we missed you. So that part's good. They're making a living doing what they want.
Yeah. This reminds me a lot of ag overtime.
Yeah.
So coming from the farm side, this is very similar to that, right?
Yep.
We practically eliminated piecework, which provided amazing flexibility. You weren't having to do the migrant or itinerant thing where you're following seasons. It
Yeah.
allowed families and businesses to establish,
Right.
have homes, be part of communities because they were making peak money in peak season,
Mhm.
and could then that held you through the slower times of year. It wasn't kind of a deal. The carve outs, of course, were convenient, right? If you're a union farm, you don't have to comply. There's a pattern here, in terms of similarities as we're seeing this, and I think it's something to keep an eye on, not only out of California but I think elsewhere. It doesn't surprise me that you said Illinois and New Jersey have the same thing, but
Yeah, New Jersey put in some new laws during COVID to strengthen their Department of Labor. So because they had an AB-5 legislation right after we did, and it didn't pass.
Oh, interesting.
So I think in 2020 or 2021, they passed something to make their Department of Labor a lot stronger, so that when they do pass maybe even a minor AB-5 bill, it's going to be a lot stronger than ours even.
Yeah.
Details, but that's what I read.
So I mean, just kind of wrapping up, we've talked a little bit about, what does this look like? I guess let's just start with where we are. It sounds like there's a lot of variables that could happen in terms of where this lands.
Yeah.
Things that different points of view want, things that we know to be true. For instance, we know the position of the governor,
Right.
and the legislature. What is the evolution of your industry and of the trucking side? Let's start with where we are, and then let's talk about a little bit of where do you see, just big picture, macro, the evolution of things going forward. We're seeing that from supply chain.
Right.
And we embraced it as an industry and said, look, we've got to, and as a community, so we've got to start designing what the future looks like, because we were caught on our heels reacting. I guess so. My question is, where are we today? You said a little bit about more functionality today at Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk logistics, and then maybe give me a little bit of your thoughts going forward.
Sure. So in LA Long Beach, there's about 50%, 55% to 60% independent contractors. The rest are company trucks. Oakland is 85% independent contractors, and the rest are company power. I think that number's off a little bit because a lot of my friendly competitors have company power. One in particular, one of your bigger members, Divine, is almost all now. So I think that number is closer to 70%, but that's still a big number, independent contractors. So where does this land? Well, if AB-5 stays its course, I think the independent contractor model is going to get a lot smaller.
Mm.
Not a medium amount smaller, a lot smaller by 2023, 2024. Our population of truck drivers is aging, much like the ILWU, coincidentally. The average worker is over 50 years old, 55 years old.
Yeah.
That's an aging workforce. In trucking, it's in all sectors of trucking, the drayage, LTL, over the road, some of even the parcel guys, they've got an aging fleet of drivers. So guys are going to retire early, maybe drive a taxi or something easier for the last few years. They're going to be, wanting to work. So we've already seen in my company a couple of guys, I'm done. Truck prices were very high, used trucks. So they said, screw it. I'm going to, sell my truck for $30,000-$40,000 more than I should have gotten last year. And I'm done. And that's what some of them have done, just a couple. So long term, I think that the independent contractor is going to get fought pretty hard. I'll just say with container chasing attorneys.
Mm.
And the employee model is going to be where things head. I also think prices, because of that, are going to keep rising, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, along with everything else, it seems like right now.
Exactly.
Well, I want to wrap up and say thank you, first of all,
Yeah.
for being here today and providing your insight, and just your level-headed analysis, but also that tactical on the ground. You are one of the most, I heard someone describe, like, it's all about clouds and dirt. The dirt is the mechanics of what you do, and the clouds is the vision of where you're going. And you are one of the most just absolute amazing clouds and dirt operators I've ever met. I can't thank you enough for joining us today, for more importantly, being such an important supporter of the Almond Alliance in our community, in our industry. You've stood by the farmer, you've stood by the handler and the processor. You've been just a great resource for us as we've solved or attempted to solve. We keep pushing towards solution with supply chain and really designing that future. So I can't thank you enough for your time and talent that you've lent to us, and for being such a good friend of the community. So thanks so much for your time today. And we look forward to an update hopefully soon.
Thank you. Had fun. Appreciate
Right.
it. Anything you need.
We'll see you. Thank you so much for joining us today for Almond Alert. I'm Aubrey Bettencourt, President and CEO of the Almond Alliance. You can find Almond Alert and all of our podcasts anywhere you like podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you get them. Don't forget to follow us across social media so you can get our Fridays What's Shaken, find out what we've been up to working on behalf of our community at the state, local, and federal levels. More importantly, you can always learn more about becoming a member of the Almond Alliance. You can get signed up for our e-blasts, our e-news, our industry alerts, and our exclusive training and services and memberships at almondalliance.org.